Bootlegging was dangerous, but the money earned by a successful run could make the difference between eating and going hungry.
Honey, everybody was poor. Back in those days, there just wasn't any money.
That's why there were so many families that had bootleggers in their families. They were starving to death, and you were living on cornbread and beans, and that's all you could afford.
When people realized that I had married a race driver, it was a look of, you poor thing. People, I think, more or less put us in the category of carnivals.
Her name was Louise Smith, 30 years old, from Greenville, South Carolina. Louise's driving had earned her a reputation with the local sheriff, but she'd never been to a racetrack in her life.
They wanted some lady to drive, and they said, well, we only got one crazy woman here that'll drive.
Well, Louise Smith had to be one of the toughest women in the world because she jumped into this thing when it was just about as rough and tough as you could get.
Louise ran her first race with only the sketchiest understanding of the rules.
I didn't even know what the checker flag meant. The man that owned the car said, if you see a red flag, stop. And I never did see no red flag. I seen all the cars go out in the infield, and I wondered where they were going, me still out there running. So they had to give me the red flag, get me off the speedway, and I was the only one out there still running.
And when she went out there, the drivers did not like it. They didn't like a woman out there on a racetrack.
Oh yeah, I've been knocked out a few times. Sometimes it'd get kind of ornery, but they didn't bother me too much. I got where I was pretty good. In fact, they said I was the best on the track. To stay out of my way, that if I got close enough to bump them, you could cut them and flip. If you hit them just right, they're gone.
The most important part of a bootlegger's car was under the hood. Hopped-up engines could carry the load and then some. The federal agents, known as revenuers, were stuck with government-issued economy cars.
Give it all you can.
It wasn't much of a contest. Guys pass you up at 150 miles an hour. You can't make 80. It's kind of a hopeless situation.
A revenuer's best hope was to get his hands on a bootlegger's car.
The best car I ever drove was one we'd seized from this Willie Clay Calls. It had 2 full-barrel carburetors and a lot of hoses going back and forth across the engine, and it was the fastest thing I ever seen. And the car wouldn't run good till it got over 100 miles an hour.
Arguments broke out over who had the fastest car. On the weekends, instead of outrunning the law, bootleggers tried to outrun each other.
They cut a place out in the open field and started racing on Sundays. No grandstands, no ticket sales, and they started betting on, man, I know I got the best car. My car outrun your car. This was actually the beginning of stock car racing down south. A guy that was real hungry would do anything to win one of those races in the early years. They would take you and get beside you in a turn and wouldn't turn, and you'd have to keep going straight and knock you out of the race. I'd say 8 out of 10 races there'd be some kind of fight or some kind of argument.
Running down the back roads in my souped-up 409. Wasn't on no joyride, the trunk was full of shine. Saw red lights flashing in my rear view. If that lawman caught me, my running days were through. Stepped down on the gas, put the pedal to the floor. Had that engine screaming, she couldn't take much more. That's when I heard that lawman put a bullet through my door. Gonna run some risk if you're gonna run moonshine. If that lawman catches you, you're gonna do hard time. You gotta be ready to lay it on the line if you're gonna run moonshine. Now I'm a simple man, I wouldn't hurt a fly. Ask anyone around these parts, I'm a friendly guy. But something took a hold of me when that bullet hit my side. I slammed into that lawman's car and sent him for a ride. He went flying through the treetops after passing the guardrail. I knew that what I'd done was wrong, but I figured what the hell. Better a dead lawman than me end up in jail. You're gonna run some risk if you're gonna run moonshine. If that lawman catches you, you're gonna do hard time. You've gotta be ready to lay it on the line if you're gonna run moonshine. I finished up my run, then went to get myself checked out. Knew I had a busted lung, of that there weren't no doubt. I headed up to county and got myself checked in. That's when I noticed this other patient start to grin. His head was wrapped in bandages and he had a bloody nose. He had 3 broken fingers and had lost a couple toes. But that lawman had his man, and he knew the case was closed. You're gonna run some risk if you're gonna run moonshine. If that lawman catches you, you're gonna do hard time. You've gotta be ready to lay it on the line if you're gonna run moonshine. You're gonna run some risk if you're gonna run moonshine. If that lawman catches you, you're gonna do hard time. You've gotta be ready to lay it on the line if you're gonna run moonshine.